So, Chris, somebody asked me the other day, should I get a job where I'm a full stack developer. I'm a jack of all trades. Or would it be better for me to specialize in one particular thing? And I think they're asking the question from the standpoint of I don't want to stunt my career. I want to make sure I'm making the best decision for myself early on in my career. This was a younger developer, and they had they were good in part of the tech stack, and maybe the door opened up for them to like really focus on that, but there was fear of that. What advice would you give a person like that who's new in their career and really has to decide, which door do I walk through?
Yeah, I think if you're new and you're uncertain of where you want to go, take the generalist. Because what that's going to do is it's going to expose you to a lot of new facets, and generally, sometimes you will interact with a specialist and see what you do and don't like. And this is kind of like a way of like testing the waters without making a commitment.
Yeah. For those who maybe don't understand the terms, can you define what it means to be a generalist versus a specialist?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this generalist is, it's learning a little bit out of everything, right? So you kind of have shallow knowledge, right? So you're kind of in the wading pool, but it's a big pool. When you're a specialist, you're getting into like one area of domain or one area of knowledge, and you're just diving really deep. So an example would be a DBA. So again, understanding how the engine works, every little like nuance of how that does. And essentially that's like going into the diving pool that's like 10 feet deep. It's small, but like you're going to go far.
Okay. I think I've heard you use an analogy before, the
cake.
The cake analogy, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and another way to also look at it too is like, when you're slicing your cake, you got your layers of cake. As a generalist, your top layer, your frosting, is your presentation. Then the first layer is going to be like your API. Then you got your database and whatever else that you have in between.
Yeah.
The specialist is, they really know how to make that top layer of cake.
Yeah,
they don't know how to do anything else, but they can make that cake. Damn it,
they're really good at, what is it, fondant or?
Oh God, nobody use.
No, is that terrible? Sorry, bad analogy.
Please, nobody use fondant. It tastes so bad.
Okay, so generally, you want to be a generalist. When you're starting out in your career, it's wise to be a generalist because it gives you exposure to all the different areas. Because later in your career, you might decide, hey, I really like doing data access, or I really like doing UI.
Yeah, and I think you see that experience in a lot of those specialist people anyway. It's like, right, they're not people that, they woke up one day and like, I just want to learn everything about SQL. Like, yeah. They started somewhere else. And I don't want to say like they fell into it, but they found a passion, and then that drove them to learn and discover and really kind of learn the best practices and really start mentoring. Well, maybe I don't want to jump at that point yet, but
what would be a reason if you're on a team, let's say you're on a team of 5 people, and you see an opportunity to specialize, what would be some reasons for you to want to do that?
I mean, so one is there's a need, right? There's a desire. And if you have a desire, like it, this is kind of one of those things that, they say like opportunities just fall into your lap sometimes, or, just seize the opportunity. Like if you're seeing that and you're like, hey, I want to learn more about this, like take it, because nobody's going to fault you for it, because obviously it's already a hole in the team. Like take the opportunity to learn something more, discover more. And again, if you learned it, you don't like it, it's not like that the need what isn't being fully filled by you just doing it. Or you can at least take that and share your knowledge with others.
Yeah, for some perspective, if you're a manager you're always going to take the path of least resistance when it comes to getting work done. We're kind of like water. We just flow. And if there's somebody on your team that is always excelling at a particular thing, like I'm really good at troubleshooting database performance, like they are going to be your go-to guy all the time. And every time you're that go-to, you're learning more and more and more. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're like, hey, I'm good at this, but I don't want to go that deep in that, tell your manager. Like, make sure you're clear. Like, hey, I can see that you're coming to me for this and I'm becoming a specialist, but that's not where I want to go. And we actually had somebody say that to us. They're like, I don't want to specialize in this particular thing, even though I'm really good at it. I really like the generality of what I do. And a good manager will respect that. Yeah, they won't pressure you to do that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like if you're really good at something and you accept that work, just understand that
you're accepting that pathway, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of the forge your own path and whatever. Like, that's essentially what it is. I'm thinking literally these past couple of weeks, we've been talking about progressive web apps and kind of that space.
Yeah.
Now that's a knowledge gap that I need to get my team on. However, in order for me to kind of help guide them, I need to understand it myself. And I've already kind of delved in a couple different areas on that. And we were presented a problem that we wanted to kind of see, okay, how does a progressive web app, or really a service worker, work to help with offline or preloading files, so that we don't have to wait for the person to like hit the page and then all of a sudden you got all the files coming in out of sync or whatever it is. Now, I will say, like, I'm by no means an expert, but, that problem presented itself. Now, this is me maybe just seeing a hammer and wanting to hit this problem with a hammer, but it gave me an opportunity to learn more and a deeper understanding of how it works. Again, still not an expert, but I can at least articulate to a team, okay, this is why you might want to do this. And this is me as an architect, not as a manager trying to learn this. So I could help guide my team in like decisions going forward of like, okay, this is why we want to do it. This is what it doesn't do. The best practice of it all.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to specialization. I mean, we can think of like a DBA is an example of a role that you really want to specialize in. We operated without a DBA for a long time. And it can work for a limited time, but at some point you need to invest in somebody who understands databases inside and out.
Right, because otherwise you get me and Robert and we're like, make that an index maybe?
Yeah, we're making terrible choices. It's like I can change the oil in my car, but I can't replace the transmission. You need a DBA to replace the transmission. And I think another example is UI UX. That's a pretty common path. A lot of universities are offering degrees that focus in that because they're recognizing, hey, this is something that businesses are specializing in.
Well, and when you talk about like, and this is again back to the progressive web app, like it's building your web application to be mobile friendly or mobile. Well, it's not even mobile friendly. It's mobile also, I think is what they're calling it. Because mobile first isn't the thing because you're designing it for both desktop and mobile at the same time. Or just general accessibility, because that's becoming more and more of a standard in UI UX in terms of making sure people, people with limitations are able to access the same content that able-bodied people are.
Completely off topic, but I watched Blue with my kids, and I learned the other day that they don't use colors that colorblind people can't see. There's no reds and greens in the entire show.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's yeah. Well, and I know like this is a thing that I know, and again, I don't know a lot about UI UX, but the couple things I do know is, again, like if you're going to do colors, you also have to have a symbol associated to it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because it's just some of those little things, or again, the person that I was referring to that, they want to eat and breathe accessibility to some degree because it's near and dear to their heart. But like, okay, now what happens if you put the site in the screen reader? Okay, how does that work? Or like when you're tabbing or things like that, like it's very important to kind of understand, like, and it's things that, again, we're not thinking of. And 20 years ago, 10 years ago,
nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's good, and it's a good direction we're headed towards. But with specialization, I think because the answer to all of our problems is not let's just specialize everything. There is a purpose for generalization, and from a management standpoint, when I hear specialist, I hear liability, or like, hey, there's one guy in your organization that knows this. So I don't think there specialization completely obliterates or replaces generalization. There still should be generalists on your team.
I think there has to be, right? Because you need somebody to be able to pick up, I don't want to say pick up the slack, but to be able to, I think the way that I typically sometimes put a generalist is they act as a surgeon, right? Because they can probably usually quickly kind of understand the problem, get in, get out, get the problem solved, move on with their life, right? Where a specialist, if you're putting them in an area that they're not comfortable with, it's going to take forever for them to figure it out.
Yeah.
Or they might not even have the skills equipped to do it.
The other thing too is like generalization just fits really well with Agile, because if you're on a high functioning Agile team, anybody can work on anything. And I think if you tried to put Agile with a team of specialists, it would almost instantly turn into waterfall.
Yeah. I kind of, to ask you this question, like in our environment, we have QA with the team.
I hate that.
Yeah. So like, I mean, but
I hate it.
Right?
Because it results in QA has nothing to do for the first like quarter of the sprint, and then the developers have nothing to do at the end of the sprint.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, that's not how we operate, but like in that model, that's essentially what happens.
Well, it's we have to go through extraordinary measures to prevent that from happening. We have to like front load the sprint with
like regression
testing.
But then it interrupts the team with their sprint because now they're taking care of regression issues.
And we got to backload the sprint with bugs from the previous sprint. So there's a lot of mental hoops we got to jump through to just because we specialize. Now,
or because we allow a specialist in the team or in the sprint.
My answer to that is simple, but it might be offensive. I would say put the QA out of the sprint and let the team test their stuff in the lower environments, and let the QA specialize in testing and test automation outside the sprint. Now we haven't done that for a variety of reasons, but I think even in the context of Scrum, there's a place for specialization, but it might look a little different than just throwing them in the sprint.
Yeah, and I know I haven't seen this like work in a lot of I haven't seen this done, but a desire of mine is to, those specialists aren't specializing in what they do. They're teaching others how to be better in what they do.
Okay, so this is to me, this is the answer to the liability question that to me comes to specialization, because the old mentality of specialization is you are the only one that can do it, and
it's gatekeeping.
I hate that. I hate when people are proud of the fact that I am the only one that knows how to do this, because from a management standpoint, you're basically boasting in the fact that you're a walking liability.
Right. And then what happens if you start becoming crummy or poor performing or things like that?
Yeah, you're holding the company hostage. But what you said, I think, is a better way to look at it, and I think a fresh perspective. Changing what a specialist is. It's not a gatekeeper. It's a mentor. It's a mentor. Teacher. It's an evangelist. It's a coach. Somebody who is the expert that you can go to. And I think we do this really well today with our DBA role. The DBA we hired, he is the most approachable guy I've ever met, and he loves to teach.
And it's funny because like I remember the interview with him. He's just like, I don't want to gatekeep. Like, I don't want to. Yeah, he's like, I just want to make sure everybody knows what they're doing and why they're doing it. And again, when I come in as an architect for my teams, it's, I'm just trying to teach them the best practices and why they should make the decisions that they're making, or why the decision that they're trying to make, what they should think through of why that is. Because then at that point, I don't need to hold their hand every step of the way, because they're educated enough to make the right decision. Yep. And I know there's several times that they said, what will Chris do? And they, they just at taking a moment and just thinking of hearing my voice in their head, they're like, no, I should really do it this way. I know I don't want to, but it's going to be more maintainable. It's going to be more scalable. It's going to reduce less effort in the future.
Yep. And there are things that only the DBA does. But
oh, for sure.
One of his many responsibilities is to make sure that the developers understand best practices.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than him being the only one that can write SQL changes, because we determined very quickly that is not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
We move way too fast. The better solution is he's gonna create these guidelines, and then he's gonna educate and kind of police. The police to me is a negative way of framing it, but he's going to make sure that those standards are being upheld. And when he sees that they're not, he educates and informs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's a better way of looking at specialization. And I think it's as managers, we should view it that way because it minimizes all of the liability that generally comes with being a specialist.
Yeah.
Pun intended there.